Welcome to UK Federal Credit Union's Mindful Money podcast, where we share expert tips and inspiring stories to keep your finances in check while maintaining your zen.
Welcome to the Mindful Money podcast today.
Thank you so very much,
I'm
Morgan.
here with Miss Roszalyn Akins. She has done so many great things in our community, and today we wanted to really highlight you for Black History Month episode, really highlight all the great things you've been doing. So I'll let you kind of take away a little bit of your background.
Sure. Thank you so very much, Morgan. I'm excited to be here today to share with you and with our community. I was born and raised right here in Lexington, Kentucky. Grew up in the east end of town where there was a housing project called on Thomas Street. And so very humble beginnings. Went to what was called Constitution Elementary School, which was a school that was segregated at that particular time. But what stood out about Constitution were the dynamic teachers that made such a difference in my life. I mean, these women were just awesome. I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Almira Allen, my second grade teacher, Miss Quillins. I had Mrs. Ward in the third grade, Miss Katie Green in the fourth grade, and Miss Rankins in the fifth grade. And so very impactful time, and these women really knew what it meant to educate young people and to believe in yourself and to grow up wanting to be a better person. And so in the meantime, I had planned to go to Morehead State University, but got the opportunity to visit Transylvania on a college tour with a friend. And I remembered when I was 4 years of age, I had an aunt that lived on Bourbon Avenue. And across the street from Bourbon Avenue was Transylvania soccer field at that time. And I would see kids out there playing soccer and interacting with one another. And sitting on my aunt's porch on a Sunday afternoon, my dad asked me, he said, "What you looking at?" And I said, "Daddy, who are those kids that are out there playing soccer and everything?" And he said, "Those are students who go to Transylvania University." And at 4, I couldn't say it. I said, "Transylvania?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm going to go to that school someday." And my dad said, "Well, that's a big dream." He said, "Because kids like you don't go to Transylvania." And that stuck out in my mind. And I was offered a scholarship to Transylvania, graduated from there as a political science and history major. I really thought I was going to go to law school, but got a calling to become an educator. And so that has been what I have done for the last 46 years, be an educator here in the Fayette County public school system. Started out as a social studies teacher at Leestown Middle School, and then for a few years went to Dunbar High School as a teacher, and then came back to Leestown as the Dean of Students, where I retired in 2004 with this intent that I was going to kind of slow down, but that was very short-lived. My husband was the pastor of First Baptist Bracktown, and we were building a new facility out on Leestown Road. And we knew we were building this new facility for the community, but just had not gotten the vision of what we really wanted to do with our new building that had gymnasium, classrooms, sanctuary, auditorium, all of that. And so I got called out of retirement. I retired in 2004, but my retirement was short-lived. Came out of retirement in March because the school, a middle school here, their principal left suddenly. And so I came out of retirement, went back to this middle school, and the group of students that I was seeing in the office all the time was African-American males. Had the lowest test scores, were not being successful in the classroom. And it just broke my heart because I could see potential in them, but they couldn't see it in themselves. So I went to 2 other members of my church, Dr. Roger Cleveland and Miss Janae Boateng, and I asked them to help in starting a program that would change the lives of these young men that I was seeing every day at this middle school. So got this idea to start what is called the BMW Academy, which is an acronym for Black Males Working. So at this middle school, there were 106 students, African-American males in this particular middle school. I sent this letter. Dear parent, I'm so excited. We're going to partner with you to start a program that can help your son. At my first meeting, we had 10 parents to show up. And so being determined, I wrote a second letter. Dear parent, I regret you did not understand how important it was that your child become in this program. I had 15 at my second meeting. So I'm up to 25. I'm on a roll. And so I sent a third letter. Dear parent, I regret you don't love your son enough that you wouldn't want to put him in a program that can help him academically, emotionally, and help prepare him for the future. Ended up with 40 young men. And the mission of the BMW Academy is to educate, motivate, and activate the potential for excellence that lies within every African American male. Here's what I know, Morgan. It's in every young man. There are candidates for greatness, but they need to be put in the right environment and around the right people to pull that potential out of them. So started with these 40 boys every Saturday with the BMW Academy. Dr. Roger Cleveland came up with our opening called The Power Story, where we bring men in from the community who tell their story. And they started seeing, wow, we had some young men come in from the University of Kentucky. One was in an African-American male in the med school, dental school. We found 10 African-American males, brought them in on a Saturday, and they shared their story. Many of them had backgrounds like them. Single-parent home, father may have been in prison, but yet they were in college and they were being successful. So that was kind of catapulted us into these young men believing in themselves. So the principles, the main principles of the BMW Academy are, we call them the well principles. Number one, they're to be well behaved. The reason why many of our students in our schools act up or don't behave well is because nobody's ever taught them what good behavior is. So we work on, it must be well behaved. Number two, you got to be well mannered. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Please, thank you. Those are words that will open doors for you. Number three, they have to be well dressed. Put a belt on. Put your pants up on you. Look, you are somebody, so you got to look like somebody. Number four, they're to be well read because readers are leaders. So found books and things that they would be interested in to get them their reading scores up. Number five, to be well spoken, because if you can speak well, that opens doors for you. And number six, they're to be well traveled. That means traveling and taking them to other places, cultural trips and educational trips. They open doors. And so all of those 6 principles lead to our young men being well prepared for life. So when we started BMW in 2005, and by the way, we're celebrating 20 years of making a difference in our community with young males. And our BMW has become so diverse. Now we have African-American males, Hispanic males, Caucasian males, Asian males. We have young men from all backgrounds who are now part of the BMW Academy. And so our very first trip, we wanted to take those 40 boys on to be well-traveled, was to take them to Atlanta, Georgia. I wanted them to go to Morehouse. I wanted them to walk where Dr. King had walked, Dr. Benjamin Mays, and all these other great African-American males. And so we were blessed with the help of some wonderful men in this community who were part of the Lexington Chamber of Commerce, helped us to take these young men on their first trip. And the amazing thing is some of those young men who were on that very first trip still keep in touch with us and everything with BMW. And it's just been a blessing to see them to develop and to grow up to be wonderful young men with families now and all of that. So that's how BMW got started. So in 2010, our superintendent at that time was Mr. Stu Silberman. Mr. Silberman started getting calls. And by the way, we started with those 40, but then that was 6th through 8th grade. Then we added 9th grade, then 10th grade, and so on up until seniors in high school. Then we said, oh my gosh, we got to get these young men earlier. So we backed it up and started 4th and 5th grade through 12th and all the way down to kindergarten. So now BMW is kindergarten through 12th grade with the same, mission, the well principles and all that. So in 2010, got a call from our superintendent here in Fayette County, he was getting calls of people saying, how do I get my son to BMW Academy? How do I get my son? And so he called me. He said, what is going on, Roz? What are you doing out there? I said, I meet with these boys every Saturday, and Tuesday night is tutoring. Thursday night, if they need help, whatever we need to do. And he said, well, I want to do a data study to see if what you're doing is really making a difference. I said, I know it's making a difference. I get their report cards. I'm getting their test scores. We're seeing them really improve. So they did a data study comparing young men who come to BMW versus those who do not come. And when the data came back, it showed that the boys who were coming to us were performing in mathematics. It was 36% higher, and in reading, 24% higher. But the big indicator was the ACT score. The average ACT score in 2010 for African American males was 15.8. Our average ACT score was 22.4. And so he said, Roz, what can I do to help you? And I said, Mr. Silberman, if you could give us those boys every day of the week, plus we'll continue to do what we're doing on Saturday and Tuesdays, doing the well-traveled and all of that. So to make a long story short, we made a presentation before our school board in 2010, and they saw, parents came, students came to talk about how BMW had made such an important impact on their lives. And so our school board voted 4. We had 1 to abstain, but the majority voted to start the first all-male college prep school for boys. It's for all boys. It was the first one ever in the whole Commonwealth of Kentucky. And so since then, 2 other counties have pattern programs after us. And so I talked about, our young men being well-traveled. So 2010 was a great turning point for us. We made that presentation to the board. They voted to start the first all-male college prep school. And in 2010, we took our first trip abroad. Took 25 young men to England, France, Germany, and Switzerland. Can you imagine young men who never thought they'd be on a plane or have this kind of opportunity? 25 of them went abroad. So that was our first trip abroad. In 2010 and 2012, we took 30 to Madrid, Barcelona, and Rome. 2014, we took 35 to Japan. 2016 took 40 to Dubai. 2018, we took 50 to South Africa. 2022, we took 60 to Egypt. And this coming summer, we're taking a group to Australia.
Amazing. What an experience for them, truly. Well, so you talked a lot about the impact that you've been able to make and things you've been doing to, help others. But I'm curious how you got started. Like, who was that mentor for you, or what's the foundation that drove you to, help put these things in place?
As I said, those teachers that I had growing up really had a major impact on my life, helping me to understand about. And then I had a godmother who was an educator. And here's what I believe. Whatever career you go into, it ought to be your calling and your passion. You just don't go into it, I think, but it ought to have something in your heart. And I know that being an educator was the calling on my life to make a difference in the lives of young people. As a teacher, I had both male and female in my classroom. But I look back on my life now and I see that God was preparing me to educate boys, because I have 5 brothers. And so as I look back on it now, I was being prepared all along to to educate boys, because boys do learn differently from girls, and it's learning that tactic and that educational strategy to help young men to be successful. I look at every one of them every year that come to Carter G, those who are in BMW. I look at them as candidates for greatness, but the key is they have to believe that themselves.
Mm-hmm. And so that's all kind of part of the power story, it seems, from what I've read about it. If you maybe can you explain the power story a
Sure.
little bit more?
That was the brainchild of Dr. Cleveland, who helped co-found the BMW Academy. The power story is to bring men in from the community who look like them, who tell their story. One of the first young men that we brought in to tell his story was a young African-American male who was, he grew up in Indiana, and when he was in the 7th grade, they tried to put him in special ed. And he was bored. He was bored, and so therefore, he had become a little bit of a behavior problem. So they wanted to put him in special ed, and his mother, of course, went to school, and she fought it. And he had a teacher that saw that greatness in him, and it was a science teacher, and started working with him when he was young. And this young man tells the story about if he didn't have someone who believed in him and that teacher who made a difference, his mom coming to school, that young man grew up, and now he's an internist and a pediatrician. And what a story it was for him to tell, that you can be looked at from a deficit point of view, but when you know greatness is in you and you meet that teacher or that mentor that changes that for you to believe in yourself. And so he tells them, you persevere, if you have a dream, you stay at it, you believe it. So we've had, doctors, lawyers, we've even had men who've been in prison to come. Who better than someone who's been in prison to come back and say, you don't want to go there? And they tell their story. So we bring in someone every week for the power story.
That's awesome. Kind of also going back to the roots of BMW is bringing in your connection to for First Baptist of Bracktown, right? So it seems from what I've listened to your interviews and stuff that you kind of funded in a way that beginning of BMW through First Baptist of Bracktown.
That's correct. When after Bracktown completed their building, their new facility, we moved to BMW to that facility where we had more room and as we were growing and everything. And so, yes, when we started out, Bracktown funded, we are what's called a tithing church. 10% of whatever we take up for the month, we put it in missions. We tithe as a church. We can't ask our members to tithe if we don't tithe as a church. So we put 10% of whatever we take up into missions. And so this was a mission of the church to invest in these young men. And here's the interesting thing. Today, BMW has over 400 young men. We started with 40, so now we've gone from 40 to, I think it's 402 that we have. But here's the amazing thing. Of the 402 young men that are in the program, maybe 6 are members of the church. So this is bigger than our church, and that's one of the things I appreciate. This is about the community and the kingdom and making a difference in young people. So the majority of them are not members of our church, but our church has been the backbone that has made sure that we have a place to meet, activities that we're involved in. But let me also give a shout out. As we were growing, and before our building was complete, we were blessed by 3 other churches that came alongside us. We had an elementary program at Shiloh Baptist Church. We had the other elementary program at Consolidated Baptist Church. And then we had the other program. Kindergarten and first grade was at First African, and it really showed a unity of the churches working together for the greater good of the young men that were in the program. And those churches are still very supportive. If we need something or whatever, those churches are still very supportive. And we have young men who come from all the churches, all the schools. We even have one young man that's in BMWA now who comes from Louisville. His dad said there's nothing there in Louisville that inspires him, that for him academically to be involved in. So his dad drives him here twice a month from Louisville, Kentucky. So we have young men from Bourbon County, Clark County, Jessamine County, Woodford County. So BMWA has grown from just being a Lexington program to being a regional program.
And I really love the story, too, that you all told about how you had like a group of 7 young men in a car from Kentucky State when they were going to school, riding together, I guess. And,
yeah.
And the church came together and
bought a bus. We bought a van on a Sunday morning, and the color of the van was green and gold, which was Kentucky State's colors. And so, yes, it's always about what's bigger than you. This is bigger than me. It's bigger than, but it's all about helping everybody in the kingdom.
So you you thought you were going to retire, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you had big plans to stay home and kick up your feet, right?
Yeah, that's just not me. The bigger disappointment was for my husband. He thought he was going to get breakfast cooked at home every morning, but that was very short-lived and everything. But yes, so there's a song that we sing in our African American culture called "I Don't Feel No Ways Tired." That's where I am. I don't feel, as long as I feel good and I have the energy, I'm going to be doing this with BMW and with Carter G.
So you already shared one example of somebody who's been through BMW. Is there anybody else who kind of really stands out, like a story to you?
Oh
that
my
you
gosh!
Love?
Let me quickly tell you 2 stories. When we took that first trip to abroad in 2010, there was a young man whose mom had brought him in on a Saturday morning. He was going down the wrong path, and she was like, I don't want to lose my son. And she brought him in, and of course, he didn't want to be there on a Saturday morning. And I said, you bring him back every week, and he did. And we could see him starting to change a little, his attitude, things. So he was there the Saturday I made the announcement to all the high school boys that this was 2009. I said, in 2010, I'm taking 25 of you all who have the highest GPA. We're going to England, France, Germany, and Switzerland. And he came up to me afterwards. He said, does that mean I can go? I said, if you in the top 25, you can go. He took his GPA from like a 1.9 to a 3.8. And he was on that trip to go to England, France, Germany, and Switzerland. And when we were at the Eiffel Tower, he's looking up, and he said, all my life, I've seen this in a book or on the television. He said, I never thought at 16 I would be at the Eiffel Tower. He said, go to the top. I'm going further than the top. I'm going to make you so proud of me. So that sticks out. And the other one is a young man. We took a group of the boys, I think it was about 25 of them, and we flew to Houston, Texas. Let me back up before that. When he was in middle school, one year for Black History Month, we said we're going to have a talent show. If you play an instrument, if you sing, if you do, rap, whatever you do, art, whatever. We want to celebrate your gifts and talents. So this young man came to me, and he said, Miss Aiken. He said, I want to play my trumpet. And I said, oh, that's awesome. You want to play your trumpet? He said, yep, I'm going to play my trumpet for the talent show. I said, well, what you going to play? And he said, I don't know, but I'll tell you next week. So he came back next week. He said, I know what I'm going to play. I said, what you going to play? He said, I'm going to play Amazing Grace. I said, oh, that's one of my favorite hymns. I can't wait to hear it. Well, that Saturday he comes. He's got a little black pants on, white shirt. And he stands up, and he gets his trumpet out, and he goes, bam, 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 bam. And we're all like this, And he runs over to me and he said, how'd I do? I said, oh. I said, you keep practicing. I said, someday I see you playing in a HBC marching band, just trying to encourage him. He said, that's my dream. So I said, okay. And I'm going like, Lord, help him, Lord. So that was when he was in the 7th grade. His senior year, we take 25 of the boys and we fly to Houston, Texas. We're going to take them to Prairie View University. At that time, the president of Prairie View is a native Lexingtonian. So he said, I want you to bring the boys down. I want somebody from Lexington, one of your boys, to come to Prairie View University. And so we flew out of Cincinnati, and that's when the scans first came out, where you got scanned to go through. And so I had my chaperone at the front, chaperone in the middle. Well, I'm bringing up the rear. Well, I see, I told him, don't have nothing in your pockets. You're going through this scan. Well, I see this funny looking thing on this same young man who had played Amazing Grace. I see something on his back. And I said, that don't look like a backpack. So I go through the line, excuse me. I said, what is that on your back? He said, it's my trumpet. I said, your what? He said, it's my trumpet. So I had a flashback. I hadn't heard him play since then. And I said, what are you doing with your trumpet? He said, I have an audition with the band. I said, you do? He said, I emailed the band director, told him we were coming, and I have an audition. And I was like, wow, I'm so proud of you. That's wonderful. So we got through. We got to Houston, and we were staying downtown at the Embassy Suites near the Galleria. So I told the boys, go up, shower, change clothes. We're going to the Galleria, to the food court to get something to eat. And so come downstairs to meet. And this young man, guess what he's got on his back? He's got his trumpet. I go over to him. I said, son. I said, the boy's like, we ain't walking. We ain't carrying that trumpet. So I said, it'll be all right to leave your trumpet up in the room. He said, I can't. He said, somebody might break in the room and steal my dream. He said, I've watched Drumline 100 times. And he said, my dream is to march in a HBCU band. He said, you told me back when I was in the 7th grade. I was like, I hadn't heard him play. So I'm like, oh my God. I said, okay, bring your trumpet. We don't want your dream stolen. So we get to the university the next day and we take our tour. After lunch, he comes over to me. He said, can I go and find a little place to practice so I can get ready for my audition? And I said, you go practice. I'll be praying. And he goes, he does the audition. The band director calls me and says, can I keep him for an extra 40 minutes? I want him to play, with our jazz band. I'm like, oh my gosh, he must. So long story short, he got a scholarship to Prairie View University. And there's a game that Prairie View plays Grambling, another HBCU, every year in September, and it's called the State Fair Classic. I paid my own way. I flew to Dallas because I wanted to see this young man. And I have a dear friend who lived in Dallas, and she said, come on down, you can stay with me, and we'll go to the State Fair Classic together. And Morgan, when I saw him step out on that football field, I lost it. I broke down and I cried like a baby, because little did I know that when I told him someday I see you playing in an HBCU band, I got to see his dream. And guess what? Today, he's a band director.
Wow.
At a school in Texas.
Oh my gosh. How special for you both.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He didn't know you were coming?
No, he didn't know. I surprised him. And then his senior year, I flew back because I was there his freshman year, flew back to Dallas. I took my daughter with me and my goddaughter, and her husband went back with me. And I got to see him his senior year. And his senior year, he was first chair of the trumpet, of that area of the trumpet. And so today, I'm so proud of that young man. He's a band director, and he's doing great.
And you didn't know back then when you told him,
No. That's why there's power in the tongue.
Yeah.
And you got to speak affirmations and positive things to young people so that they can believe in themselves. So that's just what we've been doing. As I say, 20 years, we are celebrating BMW. And so we're going to be doing a lot of different activities, celebrating the weekend of Labor Day this year. We're hoping to bring all of our BMW young men back to Lexington. We hope they'll come home. Those who've moved away, those here in Lexington, that they'll come together. And so we're going to the Central Bank Center, and I'm hoping to see thousands. Anybody who's ever been in BMW, we need you to come to this reunion Labor Day weekend.
So when you're walking around in Lexington going about your business, do you stumble upon
Oh my
people who are
gosh,
like,
all
"Miss
the time.
Akins?"
Yeah. And then, I call, if I don't remember their name, I say, hey, sweetie, or hey, honey, because it's 46 years, you don't always remember everybody.
Shoo. I wouldn't either. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to somebody maybe who wants to make a difference in their own community? Maybe they're not in Lexington, they can't get involved directly with us. Like what can they do?
Well, one of the things I believe, if it's here, I tell people all the time, people say, how do I start a program like that? How can I do? The first thing is, if you're going to do something to make a difference, you got to be committed. I didn't have a Saturday for years. I've built capacity now. Now I can take a Saturday. I have enough staff to do that. But if you're going to do this, you've got to be committed. Number two, you've got to be consistent. If you say you're going to start a program, if you say it's going to meet every Saturday, you got to be consistent. Number three, you've got to be compassionate, because everybody didn't grow up like you. And so you got to be compassionate. You got to have that in your heart, that you believe in what you're doing and in the young people that you're serving. And number four, connections. You got to make positive connections with folks in your community that believe in what you're doing. I mean, I wish I could name all the people who have helped BMW along the way. From bankers, University of Kentucky starting a program to have more African American male doctors, individuals. We'd be on here to this time next week, because you can't do this by yourself. You've got to keep connections with those in your community. So I call that the 4 C's: commitment, consistency, compassion, and connections. That's the one way to have a successful program.
It seems like all the pieces for you fit so well together. When I look at your whole story and I see all of them, it's like the puzzle is just there. What kind of maybe challenges have you faced that you've really had to overcome, and resilience that you've had to show even for the boys you've worked with?
Yeah, the toughest part has been, even though you follow the 4 C's, there will be some that don't catch the vision. We've lost 3 to gun violence. 1 was in the wrong place at the wrong time. 1 was never really gave 100% to the program. He was still dabbering back and forth. So I've lost, I've lost 3 to gun violence, and having to do the funerals of those young men has been tough. And it just makes me more determined than ever that we've got to do more to help young men see the greatness in them and the potential that they have. So that's been the challenge of those who don't give the 100%, that still thinks the world has something to offer them when they don't fully commit to the program. And as a result, my biggest challenge has been losing 3 young men to gun violence.
And not taking that so hard on yourself, right? And not
Yeah,
thinking,
it is hard.
Yeah. What about historical figures, for Black History Month? Like, what are some historical figures that really stand out to you, the work they've done?
I guess, I would have to say Harriet Tubman, with her perseverance with the Underground Railroad, determined, I'm going to, get folks to freedom. As an educator, there are 2 educators that stand out for me. Miriam McLeod Bethune, who took $1.50 and started a program for girls that later led to the opening. She has a college name for her, Bethune-Cookman. And the other one would be Marva Collins, who took the upstairs at her home in Chicago and started educating young people of color because she didn't feel like the school system was meeting their needs. And she started her own school out of her house, and later it grew into a big academy called the Westside Preparatory Academy. So if I were looking at educational folks in history, it would be those three because of their perseverance, their commitment, and that would be my three.
What about if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice? What would you say as an educator or whatever?
What would be a piece of advice I would give myself? Not to procrastinate. If there's something you want to do and you believe in your heart that that's what you've been called to do, step out on faith. I probably would have stepped out on faith a lot sooner and just activated that faith. But don't procrastinate. Get it done. Step out on faith and believe that God will bless you to get the job done.
What about ways that people in the community here can get involved with BMW?
Oh my gosh.
Or what can we do to help if we want to get involved?
We love volunteers. So we meet on Saturdays. We're blessed to have the fraternities here in Lexington. They each give a Saturday, but we can always use volunteers to help with the program. We could use folks who would love to sponsor one of our young men on one of the trips that we take. All of our sixth grade students, they take their first college visit. And so it's a 2-day trip. And so as you get older, the trips get a little bit bigger. So if you'd like to sponsor a child on one of our educational cultural trips, that would be awesome. And then we'd love you to come see BMW. I tell people all the time, seeing is believing. But, you're welcome anytime to come and visit. You can reach out to me through our website, www.bmwacademyky.org, or you can email me, rakins@bracktown.org. So just volunteer. We can always use funds to be able to do the things that we need to do.
Anything else you want to add about BMW?
No, I just thank you for this opportunity. And as I say, anyone is welcome to BMW, and it's open for all males here in Lexington and surrounding counties. If you want a program that's going to push your child academically, push them emotionally, help them to believe in themselves, that they can be all that they want to be, then reach out to me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much.
Mindful Money Podcast is brought to you by UK Federal Credit Union for entertainment purposes only. Its content is not to be regarded as legal or financial advice. The views expressed by guests are their own. Their appearance on the podcast does not imply an endorsement by UK Federal Credit Union of them, their views, or any entity they represent. Views and opinion expressed by UK Federal Credit Union employees and or guests are those of the employees and or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of UK Federal Credit Union or its board of directors. To learn more about UK Federal Credit Union, visit UK Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.